tell you guys a story today. And as I tell you the story, in your spirals, which you should have out, I just want you to jot down anything you feel like is important, kind of like bullet points, okay? Does everybody understand what we're doing? Yeah, all I want are bullet points. Anything that you feel like is important from what I tell you, all right? You ready? The story's fixing to begin. Do you need a piece of paper? Go grab it. Okay? Anything that you feel like is important to the story, I want you to jot down. We'll wait on the boys. Got it? Okay. The story I'm going to tell you is actually about my husband. It's his story. I'm telling his story. He doesn't know I'm telling it. Okay? My husband was in college at Sul Ross University when he decided to come home for a weekend. And on his way home, he was driving his truck when all of a sudden his vision got blurry. So he pulled over, he called a friend took him on home. My mother-in-law at the time was a little concerned, right? Like, what's going on? Why is your vision blurry? So she ended up taking him to the doctor, and the doctor became really concerned after they did a CT scan of his head because there was something there. They immediately care flighted him from Odessa, Texas to Dallas, where they did some more tests and they discovered that he had a brain tumor and that it was cancerous. Okay? So he's junior in college and all of a sudden he's got brain cancer. Can you imagine what that felt like? He's up in Dallas, they're doing more tests, they end up putting a halo around his head, cutting his head open, kind of laying it over, and they biopsied the spot. They realized once they put everything back together that they couldn't get to it through surgery. Okay? So he's got this tumor they can't get to. Very scary for a college kid, right? Then they decide that maybe radiation will work. So they start sending him for radiation treatments. And he goes for several months to get this tumor radiated on. It did disappear. Thank the Lord. But it left him with some interesting side effects. One, he still gets really bad headaches. Like migraines on crack kind of headaches. Okay? He has short-term memory loss. He cannot remember things that you just tell him. He has to repeat it over and over and over and over to himself in order to get it into his long-term memory. Because his long-term memory is fine. The boy can remember lyrics to songs he heard in the 7th grade, but he can't remember what he had for breakfast this morning. Okay? He can't remember if I told him to do something today. So we've come up with little tricks. Lots of leaving notes, lots of reminders. If you hear my phone go off, it's because he's texting me something to remind himself. Like if he's at a doctor's appointment and he knows he's got to, do something for the next day, he'll text me just because he can remember I probably texted my wife about it. But he can't remember what he texted. So he goes back and he checks it. Okay. So if you see me ignore my phone, it's just because I know it's him, constantly texting me. When we decided to have a family, I was a little worried, right? Was he even going to remember he had kids? I didn't have to worry. He's a great dad. Okay, but I mean, if I left them with him, would he remember to feed them, change their diapers? Like, it was a little concerning. Okay? We didn't meet until 12 years after all of this. And it was kind of a funny story. He was working for my dad, and my dad really liked him because he's a very nice man. My husband is. My dad really liked him. But then my dad comes home and he starts describing him to me. Okay? This man is older than you. Okay, older's fine. I like older guys, right? And by that time I was already teaching, so older was fine, right? Oh, but he had cancer. Okay, that's not good. Yeah, and he lives in Pecos, Texas. That's 8 hours away. Dad, no, this is never gonna work out. And so randomly, we ended up at the same place one night, and met each other that way and hit it off right away. But he has recently had another health scare. Back in November, he woke up one morning and his whole body was numb. He couldn't feel anything. So I took him to the emergency room, right? I was scared. They did all these tests, couldn't find a thing. Nothing wrong with him. Sent him home. Told us to follow up with a neurologist. Do you know how hard those guys are to get into? It took us like 6 months to get in to see the guy. And then he did another MRI with some other different something or other. It took us another 3 months to get the test results. We didn't get the test results till March. So it was from November to March. During Corona, where nobody would see him. He was back at work. He works for the railroad. And he essentially, we thought he was fine, right? They couldn't find anything. Well, in May 12th exactly, he called me and he couldn't put words together. Like, he was trying to say things, but they were coming out like garbled and jumbled, and I couldn't tell what was happening. It scared me. And he was on the job in Round Rock, and I was here.
He had a stroke.
He had had a stroke. Told him to go to the emergency room. They sent him by ambulance to Waco, Providence. Turns out he had a stroke. So, where did that come from, right? Doesn't have any history of it. They couldn't find anything back in November. Apparently that one was a stroke too. Yeah. So, we're doing all of this stuff to figure out what's going on. It turns out that he has a blood disorder that he was born with. And it's super rare, so they don't test for it. And it was really like kind of the doctor's last resort, like, we can't find anything else wrong with you. This is a long shot, let's try this, and sure enough, that's what it was. So we do have a diagnosis, but because of that, the railroad won't let him come back to work.
Gosh darn.
So now, he's having to retire early on disability, and we're having to do all of this paperwork to get him. But for the first time in our married life, and for the first time in his kid's life, he's home 24/7 now. It has been the best thing ever. He cleans my house, he does my dishes, he does the laundry. He's doing all the things that I wish I had time to do, right? So it's phenomenal.
A house of husband.
But what is really neat about the whole situation, and the reason I decided to tell you guys this story today, is because no matter what my husband goes through, he is the most hopeful person I've ever met. He never loses sight of the big picture. He has this drive, and he still wants to do things with his life. He wants to travel. He raises cows. He does all of that stuff I don't understand, right? But he's got all of these plans, and I'm like, dude, like, if that had happened to me, I would have been down and out, right? I would have given up. But he doesn't. Okay? All right. Thank you, Miss Russler. You can stop now. All right, so